Hello everyone, Glasgow Gallerina is in England again. This is going to be a short but sweet vlog. I am now in Northumberland, so if you watched my last vlog all about Martindale, Ullswater, Cockley Moor, which of course was a key inspiration for Kathleen Raine, I also mentioned Northumberland. Now this, where I am now, Matfen Hall, more on that very shortly, is just a few miles away from Great Bavington, where she lived during the First World War with her legendary Auntie Peggy. It was a source of such rich inspiration that really was lifelong. It's actually the place that at the end of her long life, in 2003, after she passed away, her ashes were scattered as well. So really a landscape that she had a lifelong affinity for and passion for. And I am going to be visiting where she lived with her Auntie Peggy, the church and the manse where she famously wrote that there was no end to snowdrops. So to do that, I am in Matfen Hall, which is one of the most, if not the most beautiful places I have ever seen. I will try and grab as much footage as I can downstairs, but I'll give you a quick look at the room beforehand. It's absolutely beautiful. It's just a few miles from Bavington, and the team, they're here very excited as well about the book, which is wonderful. So once again, I'll be sharing a few of Kathleen's words, maybe another insight into the Roundtree. We're now approaching the proofread. If you remember in the last video about to do the line edit, that is now virtually done and dusted, so really on the final straight, and I cannot wait to share it with you all. But first, I'm going to rest up because that was a rather long drive, and it's actually the first, this is going to make me sound like a baby, the first trip I have ever made totally alone in my whole life, so I'm very pleased to have made it. I stopped off at Gretna Green. I will put a few clips in if I possibly can. Very romantic place, of course. It's lovely to think of all the Wickhams and Lydias charging over the border. Well, not quite them, but the young couples in days gone by. I'm probably old enough to be one of the furious parents they mentioned now. And yeah, there's such a kind of rich history here as well. Everywhere I pass there's Roman ruins, places to explore, so hopefully I can do a little bit of that on my way home. But for now, going to relax, enjoy this absolutely exquisite setting, and tomorrow we will be visiting Kathleen Raine's beloved Bavington. Because I love, the sun pours out its rays of living gold, pours out its gold and silver on the sea. Because I love, the earth upon her astral spindle winds her ecstasy-producing dance. Because I love, clouds travel on the winds through wide skies, skies wide and beautiful, blue and deep. Because I love, wind blows white sails, the wind blows over flowers, the sweet wind blows. Take a look at this beautiful room. I'm so excited to be here because, you know, I've never stayed here before. You get a bit nervous before a trip, or at least I do, but it's so comfy and exquisitely decorated. So I think I shall be very much at home here. Probably a bit more of a luxurious setting than poor Kathleen had during the First World War when there wouldn't have even been central heating. Here's a little salted truffles and a beautiful welcome note. As soon as I arrived, they'd phoned a couple of days beforehand to ask why I was visiting. I told them all about the book, and so as soon as I arrived they said, you're our author, which was, I think, is how I want to enter every room. Very, very nice indeed. Coming round, show you the mirror. Hello. A little bedraggled after 3 hours of driving, but I'm sure with this lovely room I will rally soon. Gorgeous colourways. I think they had a wedding fair earlier, so a few people still leaving for that. Pop out, look at the landscape. I'm going to go wander very shortly. There is a golf course, but apparently there's no golf today on Sundays, so that's good. So I'm not going to get not going to get in the way of any four balls. Lovely little complimentary interiors magazine. And look at this, very at home. Cannot wait to dive into these biscuits, very much needed after the journey. Hello, wish you were here. And look, I cannot resist adding this in because my mum knows it's my first ever trip all by myself. I've got 10 points for Gryffindor here. Should be very proud of myself. You know what, for once I slightly am. And to celebrate,
Gonna eat my lovely lolly now.
So I'm about to go a walk while it's still light to explore the grounds, but before I do, I wanted to quickly share the 2 books that I brought with me for 2-day trip. I think that's about okay. The first is a very special little volume called Faces of Day and Night. Of course, this is by Kathleen Raine, as a lot of the books that I hold up these days are. Now, what's special about this one is that it's actually the first prose kind of autobiographical work that she wrote, but it wasn't published until the early 70s. So her kind of ebullient, eccentric publisher, Tamby, who you will meet in the Roundtree, more or less went bust / lost the manuscript before it could be published. It was written during the early 40s, during the Second World War. Tamby then ran aground in more ways than one, and the essays were not seen again until I believe the late 60s, when the printer's proofs were, or the printer's moulds rather, were discovered and the collection could be published. And Kathleen decided not to alter a single word, so it was dedicated to her friend Helen Sutherland, who we met at Cockley Moor, of course. So one of the things that's so special about this one is it really is one of the first insights into this place and what it meant to her. People might be more familiar with her first full volume of autobiography, Farewell Happy Fields, which documented her childhood until she went up to Girton College in Cambridge. But Faces of Day and Night are really her kind of preliminary reflections on that place, but in such a deep, thoughtful way, in such a poetic way, and of course reflecting on the First World War during the Second and her experiences as a child when she herself was a young mother. So I'll be reading a few extracts from this before we finish up, and hopefully you'll be able to see just what it was about this landscape that was so inspirational, so evocative, so moving for her. The second book I brought with me is one very dear indeed to my heart by this point, A Pilgrimage of Dreams by Thetis Blacker, who was one of Kathleen Raine's very closest friends. Certainly after Gavin Maxwell's death in particular, her and Thetis were really so important to one another. They actually, in their later years, they would write to each other on behalf of their cats, the sweetest correspondence imaginable. That definitely needs to be published, just putting it out there. And what's special about this book, I actually take it with me pretty much everywhere I travel because it's such a kind of thoughtful source of comfort. Thetis had very visionary dreams that tapped into what Blake wrote about, what Kathleen wrote about as the realms of imagination. And this volume was a collection of those dreams. So Kathleen wrote the foreword, and they are just this kind of sweetest and yet most profound explorations of different levels of consciousness. It's a really unique, really fascinating book. They discussed about at the beginning whether to have a psychologist introduce it or a psychiatrist, and actually felt that would be the very worst thing to do, because this is not, it's not about the human brain. It is about, by definition, beyond the human, beyond what we think of as the limitations of our consciousness. So it really is something special. And I've read the dreams, the stories so many times. A few of them actually mention Kathleen, which is lovely. And I can just imagine the two of them over their cups of tea, reflecting on in poetry, in music, in art, because Thetis she began life as an opera singer, or began her career, I should say, I don't know if she was a baby opera singer, began her career as an opera singer and then became a batik artist. So Temenos Academy, Kathleen's charity, now runs the Thetis Blacker Batik Scholarship. I hope I'm pronouncing batik, it might be something different, but they run a scholarship in her honour. It's an Indonesian art form that really creates the most vivid, stunning pieces. I'm fortunate enough to have one of my own of Thetis at home, and this, I think, encapsulates what's there in her art is also there in her dreams. So whenever I'm sleeping in a new place, I like to have this book with me. On my hearth, a clear flame flickers. What more secure, familiar than this room built of ever-speeding light? So swift its motion, it seems to stay constant, yet nothing still but this steady seeming. And I, habituated to what appears present before these eyes, this known, unknown, familiar place. Beautiful, flickering, translucent flame, blue and yellow and bright. Just behind me you can see what I gave a little peek inside, the orangery. Now, interestingly, there's a key scene in the Roundtree that takes place in an orangery, although that one is on the other side of the Atlantic at Washington DC's Dumbarton Oaks, which is part of the National Gallery of Art. Kathleen Raine was famously, or rather I would want to make it famous, the first woman in history to deliver the A.W. Mellon Lectures in Fine Arts at Washington DC. Wonder and hope. For can we believe that such dreams are merely messages in a code we may learn and translate into mundane meanings, which are, in comparison with the language they are told in, banal? Or in that inexhaustible ocean of experience, whose tide rises in our sleep and ebbs with our waking? Is there another kind of knowledge accessible to us? Do we remember former lives of our own? Enter the memories of other lives, present or past? Or, in that world, do such distinctions fall so differently that we can no longer speak of experiences as our own or some others? It seems that in these regions there is no separation or distinction between the living and the dead, past and future, our own heavens and hells, and those of others. We do not know. But the sense of the numinous we experience is no matter of faith or credence. It is in the nature of the experience itself, which tells us that we are in holy and terrible places, where against the judgment passed upon us there is no appeal, but where we may become wise beyond the measure of our daily lives. Under these hills too high and bare for love or war, I live in a green place without a story. Sun, cloud, wind, beyond my gate the simple fields that Adam tilled. For many years, the manse has been the house I visited in my dream. Always, it seemed, with some reason why I could never quite return. But all things remain in memory, and now with the millennium it seems that I have become part of the place and time on earth where I have been most happy and most blessed. May generations to come be no less blessed by the special memories and living presence of Bavington. I could have told much by the way, but having reached this quiet place can say only that old joy and pain mean less than these green garden buds the wind stirs gently. I was happy on earth then, and loved no place on earth as I loved the manse, and its garden, and its moors, and the horizon. In the high, lonely hills, long ago astray, why did the great, merciless winds fill my heart with joy? Life long ago, such days of travelling cloud and ceaseless wind sealed my flesh and blood, native of wild hills. Elsewhere, sun and summer. Here, high elementals of the air. That sense of here and now eludes us, but here I had it, and sat like a bird on her nest, secure, unseen, part of the distance, with the world, day and night, wind and light revolving round me in the sky. The distant and the near had no longer any difference between them, and I was in the whole, as far as my eyes could see, right to the sunset. Back home now, and wow, what an amazing trip that was. It was such a treat, such an honour to see Great Bavington, and actually to gain a sense of how little it's changed in the century, slightly more than a century, since Kathleen was there as a First World War evacuee, as little Kathy running around the fields. The landscape is exquisite. It's still, as I say, these kind of rolling fields. I think you're really struck by the sense that not that the land belongs to us, but that we belong to the land. As far as the eye can see, it's nature, it's freedom, and that was very much a lifelong inspiration for her in her prose, in her poetry, in her life full stop. Kathleen described Great Bavington as her happy fields of her childhood, and even later, towards the end of her life, she said it was the place where she'd been most happy and most blessed, and that joyful, jubilant atmosphere was still very much present. The sense of community is so strong, so welcoming. So special shout out to the wonderful Muriel, who lives in Carr House. Kathleen wrote about Granny Carr's cottage back in the day. So Muriel and her gorgeous donkey Dorabella welcomed me. Dorabella, let me give her a cuddle. What a gorgeous girl. I think she would have rather had a carrot, but she'd put up with a cuddle. And then they shared, well, mostly Muriel to be fair, they shared a little more about history, invited me in for tea, which was such a treat. And I got a sense of the Great Bavington of today and how much Kathleen's legacy means to them in turn. Muriel also very kindly gave me a copy of this History of Great Bavington, which was written as part of the village's Millennium Project. The foreword, written by none other than Dr. Kathleen Raine, CBE. So again, in here she described the happy fields as the place where she'd been most happy and most blessed. So truly a lifelong source of inspiration for her. And there's actually a Thetis Blacker link as well now, because I mentioned Thetis's opera career in her earlier days, and Dorabella is named after a character in Così fan tutti. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I know more about my poetry than my opera, but she's a very, very classy girl. Muriel is a wonderful owner, a wonderful guide to Great Bavington, and it was such a pleasure. Once again, a real key stop on the Kathleen Raine tour, and I cannot wait to return. They more than we are what we are. Serenity and joy we lost or never found. The forms of heart's desire, we gave them what we could not keep. We made them what we cannot be. Their kingdom is our dream, but who can say if they or we are dream or dreamer, signet or clay? If the most perfect be most true, these faces pure, these bodies poised in thought, are substance of our form, and we, the confused shadows cast.